welcome to Making Art on Air, the official podcast of the Art Academy of Cincinnati. I'm your host, Morgan Grace. My guest today facilitates some of the most epic art installations on the globe. He's an Art Academy alum, currently working at UAP, a bronze foundry that brings large-scale installations to life. Let's take a look. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Price. There he is.
Hello, it's me.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you for that intro. So kind of you. That you nailed it. That's it. That's me.
Very good. I can't even imagine how busy and chaotic the day-to-day art world is. So thank you so much for making time to chat with me today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be back involved with the Art Academy. I feel like it's been so many years. I was kind of quiet for a long time because I got into this craziness and was like, don't tell anybody. Like, nobody needs to know what's happening. And now I'm to a point where I'm comfortable in the position that I'm in and doing what I do, and I'm very happy to talk to you about it because it's wild. I mean, it literally is like a dream job for me to have gone to art school and to be where I am. You know, I feel very fortunate.
When were you at the Art Academy?
Oh, you know, I should have looked these things up. It was 2011-ish.
Okay.
Maybe I graduated in 2014.
As a freshman, when you entered, were you like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do this and stay on course? I mean, like, being a freshman is so overwhelming.
Yeah. So, well, funny thing is I transferred to the Art Academy. So I went to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago for 2 years. So I did my freshman, sophomore year in Chicago. And that school is just a very strange place because it's like you have the highly conceptual, you know, people pooping in a bag with glitter on the wall, literally right next to, you know, somebody's like 80-hour stone lithograph, you know, that they did. And it's in the same critique. And you get that at any art school, but it was too much for me because I was the stone lithograph guy. I was like, yo, what's going on with this bag? Like, don't tell me that's what I think it is. And it was. That was the truth. That's actually an example of that is a real critique that I was in. That kind of did it for me. So wow. I ended up transferring to the Art Academy. I'm from Ohio. And, you know, I just had heard a lot of really great things about Cincinnati and about the Art Academy. It's a smaller school, but there was just something about that community I was very drawn to. And I looked at a number of schools, and when I entered in, you know, I was obviously a junior at that point, but hectic even then, because, you know, nobody really knows what they're doing, I feel like, or you got maybe 5% of the students who are like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do, and they nail it, right? That's what they just continue doing that. I started out as a painter, doing a lot of drawings. And it wasn't until I came to the Art Academy that I started kind of shifting gears towards this other weird thing that I was doing that I'm sure we're going to talk about, that anybody who knew me when I went to school was like, oh, that was that weird guy that did that weird stuff.
Does it start with a T and rhyme with schmaxidermy?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I it was actually an interesting, like, it was facilitated by the Art Academy, the fact that I got into this. And I think once it was put into motion, everybody was like, what have we done? Like, what have we unleashed?
Wow. Yeah. How do I segue to bronze foundry?
Yeah. So I don't know that there is a segue. Like, when I left the Art Academy, almost day one from leaving the Art Academy, I continued to be a part of this artist collective. I was very passionate about that body of work and the conversations we were having, kind of just changing the narrative of just animals in general and the way we relate to this earth and being on this earth. And I was very excited by that, but I also needed a paycheck. So when I found out that there was a foundry in the area that was hiring, I essentially sent in my resume, which was like taxidermy, and they were like, oh, you know how to do sculpture? Good enough. So I'm very thankful that John Klein, who owns Casting Arts and Technology right there in Cincinnati, an amazing little gem that if people see what I'm doing and they're like, wait, what is that? Like, what is this? There's one in Cincinnati. You should look into it. They're in Camp Washington, and it's just a great, amazing place. But he hired me very, very quickly out of school. Small team there. There was maybe 3 full-time employees. Shane Hatfield, who graduated with me, also was hired at the same time, is still there now, leading the team for much of the processes that he and I learned, now, whatever that was, not 8-9 years ago. And I just kind of started to transition from this one skill set of making things into another world of making. It's very different to be involved in foundry. The one connection that I have between like what I was doing in school and foundry work is that I was always, without realizing it, like very passionate about teaching people processes and being a part of critiques and like helping to expand people's understanding of the materials you can use and the different processes you can use to arrive at either imagery or sculpture or what have you. So what I fell in love with very quickly about foundry was that it's this process that no one person can really do on their own. Every project is so unique, and you're essentially getting someone's work, and they bring it to you and they say, help me to do this crazy, I want to make it metal. And you're like, yeah, let's make it metal. It's a magic process, especially when you do it right and you're careful. The kinds of details that you can get to translate from an artist's original into metal is just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So that, I would say that's the one kind of connection, is just the making thing. People who knew me in school, who knew I was that way, I think it was no surprise to them that they were like, oh, he's gotten into this other thing where he's helping people make stuff. And I eventually left Cincinnati to come here to New York to what I consider the greatest fine art foundry in the world. At the time, it was called Polish Talix. And I was a fabricator here for a number of years, and have now moved into a role where I essentially talk about the work all day long and try to get people to come and make things with us, because I just like talking about it. And they were like, hey, yeah, you maybe you should talk about it for us on behalf of us. So that's how I kind of fell into where I'm at now.
Well, your enthusiasm and your love for the work is very, very evident and quite contagious as well. I'm going to show a picture to give folks an idea. I can imagine seeing this image on a sketch pad, and your job is to, bring this to life. So look at this. That's gigantic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's work by Sanford Biggers. That's at Rockefeller Center in New York City. That was there. It came back to us just today, actually. They were wrapping it up to ship out to L.A. It's about 23, 26 feet tall, somewhere in there. It's all cast bronze. Yeah, somewhere between 15 and 20,000 pounds. It's an enormous sculpture.
Wow. What about this guy?
Oh, so that's work by Cause. That one's got to be close to. That one's either 26 or 30 feet or something. We make so many of these that the heights, I'm there. It's at least 26 feet tall. That's cast aluminum and painted, and that's out in LA. So yeah, you can see me over there next to. That's a big one too. So that ships in. Head is separate. Arms are separate. Those things all bolt together perfectly seamless.
Wow.
It's an amazing. Yeah, you stand there looking at it, and it looks like. You bought it off Amazon or something. It looks like a giant plastic toy, but it is a permanent public sculpture that is made of aluminum, painted.
That's amazing. Thank you for wearing a matching shirt too, by the way.
I know. I say everybody always says that. They're like, "Oh, you wore your blue shirt that day."
So I was in the transportation industry for many years, and when I see stuff like this, I just think, okay, that must be disassembled, put on trucks.
Yeah.
And so when I look at this next picture, I'm just blown away. Like, what is this? Just please tell me everything about this picture.
Oh boy. Yeah. So this is the other two I was tangentially involved in just by being at the foundry. Very little to do with. This one was when I first started. So that's me there after working for the day. This is work by Tom Otterness. This went to Mona in Tasmania, Australia. So not only did this thing have to ship somewhere, it had to go to Tasmania. Of all places. So
wow.
It's funny that we talk about this one in shipping and transportation. So you imagine the like slides come off and the head and the neck comes off. That very large sphere is one single piece. That crate was enormous. The crate for that thing, because you have to crate it with all this cushion around it. It's got to be safe to move. It essentially has to be a no-touch crate. We have two bridge cranes. You're seeing one in the back there. You can't actually see the hooks. But on the left there, that yellow bridge, you can see there's a rail that goes up towards the top right. That runs the length of our whole building. That crane can lift about 50,000 pounds. We have another bridge crane. We actually had to line both of them up over top of this crate. And for whatever reason, I was one of the people running the crane. I mean, there's people who have been at this company for like 25, 30. There's a couple people who've been there 40 years. For whatever reason, they were like, hey, give Mike the crane. So like me and this guy, Salvador, who I call Papa. He calls me Bambino. Love this guy. He's amazing. Some of these people do unbelievable things every day. And he had taken me under his wing, taught me many things about fabricating. And him and I were like running the cranes at the same time, and there's no, they're like not like joined up in any way. You're literally just like lift now, and you're like both trying to hit the button at the same time to lift this like 50,000 pound crate so that we could put it onto a truck, so it could be a wide load, so it could go to the port, so it could be put on a boat to Tasmania. So we deal with that kind of stuff all the time. It's funny that you talk about transportation and show that one. That's one of the bigger ones, and I was actually pretty involved in that one. But pretty much everything we ship is just silly how large it is.
And then by contrast, I think you might handle some smaller items. And tell me everything about this picture.
Yeah. So
is that what I think it is?
Oh yeah. We cast the Academy Awards, Oscar.
Oh my God.
It is, say what you will about the Academy and that whole thing and what the awards are, we can leave that out of it. But I will tell you that the objects themselves are beautiful. They are, every one of them is treated like a sculpture. We cast roughly 100 of them every year. I think we just had done 80. The ceremony's coming up here in February or March. I don't remember if it got pushed back, but it's coming up very soon. They're solid cast bronze. They get triple plated, nickel, copper, 24 karat gold, and the Academy will settle for nothing less than pristine, perfect, not one pinhole. You look at these objects, you've never seen so much 24 karat gold before. It's kind of mind-boggling to hold these things. It literally feels like a cartoon, like you're face is glowing gold. The way it like reflects light, it's absolutely nuts. And they're essentially plated like the same standards that the military uses, or like NASA uses to plate satellites. It's like the best 24 karat gold plating you can imagine. And they're, like I said, they're all cast individually. It takes months to move them all through the process because they're all handled one by one. We actually have to make every single nominee plate because we don't know who's going to win. Nobody knows who's going to win. We actually don't even know the nominees until everybody knows the nominees. So like the day it's released on Google, we're like Googling it, like, who's the nominees? Like we can't even wait the 10 minutes for the Academy to let us know. It's like who's the nominees? We make every single plate. We ship all the Oscars out. They have spots for the plates to fit on there and screw on, but every plate is separate. And then somebody is announced as the winner, so-and-so best picture. They're literally in the back screwing the plates on right then. Yeah. And the rest of the plates get recycled down.
That's amazing.
It's a crazy turnaround because we don't, whenever you find out the nominees, it's like not that long between finding out the nominees and the day of the ceremony. So the moment we find those nominees out, we're like in the computer doing our layouts with all the names. And it's like 150 tags or something every year. It's a crazy amount of tags.
To get that kind of inside info on the mat. I mean, I'm a, movie buff. I watch the awards every year. It's just so exciting.
Yeah.
It's magical. The UAP has offices, the 3 offices in Australia, 3 in China, I think, 1 in Singapore. Zoom has transformed the way that we work and collaborate. Do you get to travel around?
Yes. Yeah, so I mostly am based in the U.S., so we'll travel to, like right now, there's Frieze art fairs happening in L.A., so last year I was at that. Miami Basel happens every year in Miami, Florida, right? So our business development team is kind of constantly taking turns traveling to these various events. I was in Denver just this past couple months for Coda Summit, which is kind of a technology and art summit. So I mostly am based here. Because I started right around COVID, I haven't done any traveling, internationally, but I'm sure there will be opportunities for it. Yeah, we have the foundry in Brisbane, which is where UAP started. There's one in Shanghai, hopefully soon to be one in Europe, and yeah, the one here in New York. But we also have offices now based out in LA. So my direct boss is based in LA for the moment, so I'm kind of back and forth every once in a while between here and there, which is, again, just kind of a very strange thing to find myself at these art fairs. Because being involved with UAP, I have like VIP access, which sounds so silly, and you're like, it's just a very weird thing. So you go like early hours, and you're literally, I'm not kidding you, you're there with the celebrities who are there to like buy their art. You're there with the billionaires who want like first dibs on things at the fair. So It's a very strange world to be, or a very strange thing to be involved in that world, I should say, of this just like highest end art. You're seeing works there by some of the most famous contemporary artists and some who have long since passed, works that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's here. And they're selling it, and I'm seeing it, and I'm seeing somebody like negotiate on an iPad like how much they're going to pay for it. It's like it's a very strange world.
And dealing in millions.
Oh, millions.
Yeah.
Millions. That's the other thing is, I don't work on like any kind of commission, right? We're not in the gallery world. We're in the fabrication world. So our margins are as good as they can be. We want to make money and run our business and this and that, but we also have to be very competitive. So we're dealing in millions and millions of dollars to produce artwork, but it's unbelievable how many millions of dollars it costs for us to make it, right? So it's like we might charge $4 million to make a sculpture, and it's like, oh wow, $4 million. It's like, yeah, but it costs $3.5 million in labor and materials and logistics and engineering, and it's like, it's an amazing amount of work goes into producing some of these things. But yeah, many of them are in the millions for sure. Some of them much smaller contracts. We don't turn anybody away. I actually really enjoy working with artists on a smaller scale in a more intimate setting, much closer to what I used to do in Cincinnati for the Foundry, where you're working with people who, again, they're kind of coming to you with this object saying like, hey, like, help me to make this thing. And you're like, yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to make it here.
Isn't it interesting that just an object can have so much narrative within it and be communicating so many things?
Yeah, especially, when you get some of these artists who it's kind of amazing to not only see some of this work in person, but you're seeing how it's made, but I'm also literally talking to the artist like before it's a thing. Like I'm at, someone's studio seeing some sketches essentially, and they're like, oh, I want to cast this in bronze, and you're kind of working through some of the reasons why they're doing what they're doing, and you're all of a sudden you're like back in this like studio kind of setting, this like critique kind of setting where you're like, oh, well, we have what's important to you in the work. I want to help you to communicate that in the permanent version, in the bronze version. And sometimes there's compromises to be made, and sometimes you have a problem and you just throw a lot of money at it, and then the problem's solved. So it's like, it's a crazy thing to get to be in such close contact with so many of these artists, because it really layers on that meaning of these things that go out into the world. I've like tears in my eyes watching, a sculpture of Ursula von Ridingsvard get put on a truck, and you're like, oh, I've like helped birth that thing from, nothing, from an artist's original, and then you go through months and months and months of building something with the artist to put it out into the world. And a lot of people just look at it, oh, it's nice, but yeah, if you take time to really sit with any piece of art, it's kind of amazing what you're able to translate into bronze without the bronze or the hand of any of the people who work at the Foundry being there. So that's always been one of the other kind of amazing things about working in Art Foundry, is it's like two sides of this coin, that you're doing an incredible amount of work to help these artists translate their work and put something out into the world that people are going to talk about and gather around and have conversations about. But our job is to be invisible. It's not our job at the Foundry to like leave our mark or put our hand in it. So when these things go out into the world, you'd never even know what it took. You'd never even know it took 80 people 15 months to make something. So it's this like this passion that many of us have for helping artists to make something, while also knowing that our names aren't going to be in the history books. Our Foundry's name might not even be in the history book. It's just, oh, that's a work by Jeff Koons. Like, that's all you get, right? You don't see the list of 198 people who helped make it happen. So at this scale in the art world, that's been one of the biggest like kind of shocking things to me. That's like, oh, I'm just a somebody. I'm just one person of dozens and dozens of people who make this happen. And yeah, my name's not on the little card in the gallery. But then every once in a while you do get these artists who like want to celebrate every single person who was involved. And it's just like so heartwarming, because these people are, famous contemporary artists, and they don't need to do that. But there's some really amazing human beings out there who have made it to that level, but also are still very much like, well, I can't do it alone. Like I need everybody. I need all of these people here to make something. So that's, one of the craziest parts about working at this scale is just what it takes to make these things.
The thankless nature of the role of facilitator and helping people, you really are birthing this thing that it didn't exist before.
Yes, I like that.
Thank you so much for talking with me today and for sharing your work and your journey with the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was lovely to chat with you, and I'm glad we could make it happen.
Mike Price is an Art Academy alum currently working at UAP. For more information about the amazing large-scale projects and installations, go to uapcompany.com. alumni.com. This has been Making Art on Air. I'm Morgan Grace. Thanks for watching. See you next time.